The massive crystalline chamber floated in the void between stars, its walls pulsing with ancient energy that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Inside this monument to galactic order, 12 species sat in judgment upon humanity. Their forms, as diverse as their contempt, was uniform. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension as Ambassador David Grant stepped forward, his simple human form dwarfed by the towering representatives of the Galactic Council. The Alteron Chancellor rose from its energy throne, a being of pure light that had existed since before Earth's sun ignited. Its voice echoed through dimensions when it spoke, carrying the weight of millennia. "The charges against the human species are numerous and grave," the Chancellor declared, its form flickering with displeasure. "Aggressive expansion beyond approved limits, technological development without oversight, and most damning of all, refusal to submit to population control protocols established for the good of all galactic citizens." Grant felt the weight of billions of human lives pressing upon his shoulders as he listened to the litany of accusations. Behind him, his small diplomatic team maintained their composure, despite knowing that this trial was merely a formality. The decision had been made long before they arrived at this cold tribunal among the stars. The slug-like, Borgathy representative slithered forward, its multiple eyes focusing on Grant with undisguised disgust. "The humans have developed quantum drive technology that surpasses our own, and yet refuse to share these advances with the Council," it gurgled through its translation device. "Such selfishness violates the fundamental principles of galactic cooperation that have maintained peace for over 10,000 years. We offered to share our technology in exchange for fair treatment," Grant replied, his voice steady, despite the hopelessness of his situation. "We asked only for the right to expand at a rate that could sustain our growing population, and for representation proportional to our contributions to galactic society. These requests were denied without consideration." The Crystalline Vorthok Collective spoke next, their unified voice ringing like broken glass. "The humans mine asteroids that have held sacred significance to our people for centuries. They establish colonies on worlds we had designated as nature preserves. They show no respect for the delicate balance we have worked so hard to maintain." Grant's jaw tightened as he prepared his response. "Those asteroids contained resources essential for our survival, and according to galactic law, they were unclaimed. The worlds you call nature preserves were barren rocks until our terraforming technology made them suitable for life. We brought life to dead worlds, and you call it desecration." The Chancellor's form brightened with what could only be interpreted as anger. "This very attitude demonstrates why humanity cannot be trusted with galactic citizenship. You see only resources to be exploited, worlds to be conquered, and technology to be hoarded. You lack the wisdom that comes with age and the restraint that comes with true civilization." "Perhaps," Grant said, his voice growing colder, "but we also lack the stagnation that comes with complacency and the fear that comes with declining power." A ripple of shock passed through the assembled representatives. No species had ever spoken so boldly in these chambers, and certainly not a race barely 3 centuries into their galactic presence. The Borgathy war speaker's massive form quivered with rage, while the ethereal Zephyrians seemed to fade slightly, as if the very concept of such defiance was too alien for them to fully comprehend. The Chancellor's voice boomed with finality. "The Galactic Council has reached its decision. Humanity is hereby exiled from all systems beyond the Sol sector. You have 30 standard days to withdraw all human presence from contested territories. Any human vessel found beyond the designated boundary after this period will be destroyed without warning." Grant felt something die inside him as he listened to the sentence, but it was not hope that died. It was the last vestige of respect he had held for these ancient beings who called themselves the guardians of galactic peace. "You make this decision out of fear," he said quietly. "Fear that humanity represents something you cannot control, cannot predict, cannot dominate. We make this decision for the good of all species, the Chancellor replied. Perhaps a few centuries of isolation will teach your kind the humility necessary for true galactic citizenship. The vote is unanimous. The decision is final. The other representatives nodded their agreement, from the insectoid Krell to the gaseous Novari, each species united in their desire to see humanity contained and controlled. They had convinced themselves that this exile was justice, that forcing humanity back to their home system was somehow merciful compared to the complete annihilation they could have chosen. Grant looked around the chamber one final time, memorizing the faces and forms of those who had just sealed their own fate. "You call this justice?" he said, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the vast space. "You claim this decision serves the greater good, but what you have really done today is declared war on a species whose greatest strength has always been its ability to adapt and overcome." The ambassador reached into his formal diplomatic robes and withdrew a small communication device, the quantum transmitter that linked this chamber to Earth itself. The representatives watched in confusion as Grant held the device high above his head. "This device represents the last official communication between humanity and the Galactic Council," he announced. With deliberate precision, Grant crushed the transmitter in his bare hands. The delicate quantum components, sparking and dying as they scattered across the crystalline floor. The symbolic gesture sent a clear message that resonated through every translator in the chamber. "Humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council," Grant declared, his voice now carrying a strength that made even the ancient Chancellor pause. "We reject your authority, your judgment, and your protection. What happens next is entirely your choice, but know this: you have not exiled a species of farmers and merchants. You have freed the apex predators of Earth from any obligation to show you mercy." The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in their long existence, the council representatives began to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. But the decision was final, the vote unanimous, and their pride would not allow them to show doubt before this defiant human. Grant turned his back on the council without waiting for dismissal, a final insult that would have meant death for any other species. But the representatives let him go, perhaps sensing that executing him now would only prove his point about their true nature. As the human delegation departed the crystalline chamber, none of them looked back at the beings who had just changed the course of galactic history. They had come seeking justice and found only fear disguised as wisdom. Now they would return to Earth with a simple message: the time for diplomacy was over, and the age of human dominance was about to begin. 3 months had passed since the exile decree, and the silence from the Galactic Council felt more ominous with each passing day. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, New Geneva Station hummed with an energy that had nothing to do with its fusion reactors. Every corridor buzzed with activity as humanity's finest minds worked around the clock, turning their species' death sentence into something far more dangerous. Fleet Admiral Tom Hayes moved through the station's command center, like a man possessed, his weathered face showing the strain of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. The holographic displays surrounding him painted a picture that would have terrified the council representatives had they been able to see it. Humanity was not cowering in their home system as expected. Instead, they were preparing for war with efficiency that bordered on frightening. Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her workstation as Hayes approached, her eyes bright with the kind of exhaustion that came from groundbreaking discovery. The scattered components and alien technology fragments on her desk told the story of humanity's greatest achievement since faster-than-light travel. "Admiral, the final tests are complete," she announced, her voice carrying barely contained excitement. "The Prometheus-class battleships are ready for deployment." Hayes studied the technical readouts with growing satisfaction. The ships represented everything humanity had learned from their brief time among the stars. combined with innovations that would have been impossible without the pressure of impending extinction. "Show me the combat projections again," he requested. Though he had memorized every detail hours ago, Foster activated the holographic display, and suddenly the command center was filled with the ghostly outline of a warship, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Prometheus-class vessels incorporated adaptive armor that literally learned from each attack, quantum torpedoes that could phase through conventional shields, and most importantly, AI systems that evolved their tactics in real-time based on enemy responses. "The armor plating uses programmable matter," Foster explained, her scientific excitement overriding her exhaustion. "After taking damage, it analyzes the attack pattern and restructures itself to better resist similar weapons. The quantum torpedoes bypass traditional defenses by existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously until the moment of impact, but the real breakthrough is the neural networking system." Hayes nodded grimly. The neural networks allowed every human ship to share combat experience instantaneously, creating a collective learning curve that grew exponentially with each engagement. Where the Council species relied on ancient tactics and predictable strategies, humanity would adapt and evolve with every battle. The sound of approaching footsteps announced the arrival of Captain Rex Stone, humanity's youngest fleet commander, and perhaps their most aggressive tactician. At 32, Stone had already proven himself in dozens of skirmishes with pirates and rebels, but the coming war would test him in ways no human had ever been tested before. "Admiral," Stone said, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who had never encountered a problem he could not solve through superior firepower and tactical brilliance. "The fleet commanders have finished reviewing the strategic assessments. We're unanimous in our recommendation." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Which is, we don't wait for them to attack us," Stone replied, his words carrying the weight of humanity's collective anger. "The Council expects us to retreat to Earth and wait for their judgment. Instead, we show them what happens when you corner a species that climbed to the top of its food chain by never backing down from a fight." The command center fell silent as everyone present considered the implications of Stone's proposal. They were talking about launching a preemptive strike against civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, using ships that existed only as blueprints and theories that had never been tested in actual combat. Dr. Foster pulled up another set of data, her expression turning serious. "Our intelligence suggests the Council species have grown complacent after thousands of years without serious warfare," she reported. "Their fleets are scattered across the galaxy in patrol formations, designed more for show than actual combat effectiveness. Most of their weapons and defense systems haven't been significantly updated in centuries." Hayes absorbed this information with the calculating mind of a career military officer. "What about their numerical advantage?" "Meaningless if our technology works as designed," Stone interjected. "A single Prometheus-class ship should be able to engage multiple Council vessels simultaneously. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons we abandoned decades ago. Their armor can't adapt to new threats. Most importantly, their commanders are trained to fight the last war, not the one we're about to bring to them." The Admiral moved to the central display, which showed the current positions of major Council fleets throughout the galaxy. Red markers indicated the locations of humanity's most vocal opponents, while blue markers showed potential targets that would maximize strategic impact while minimizing civilian casualties. "The Rigel Nexus," Hayes mused, pointing to a major trade hub controlled by the crystalline Vorthok. "It's lightly defended, but strategically vital. If we could take it intact, we'd control one of the most important shipping routes in the galaxy." Stone's smile was predatory. 12 ships, Admiral. Give me 12 Prometheus-class vessels, and I'll take the Nexus within 48 hours. The psychological impact alone would be worth the risk." Foster frowned at the tactical display. "The Vorthok have 60 ships stationed there, including 3 of their heavy cruisers. Even with our technological advantages, those odds seem impossible. Only if we fight the way they expect us to fight, Stone countered. But we're not going to line up our ships and exchange broadsides like gentlemen from some ancient naval battle. We're going to hit them fast, hit them hard, and hit them in ways they've never experienced before. Hayes considered the proposal for several long minutes, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. Failure would mean the certain destruction of humanity's most advanced ships and their most experienced crews. Success would announce to the galaxy that Earth's children were no longer willing to accept the role of grateful supplicants. There's something else, Foster added quietly. Our psychological warfare division has been analyzing Council species for months. They've identified specific fears and cultural blind spots we can exploit. The Vorthok collective consciousness makes them particularly vulnerable to information warfare. If we can convince them that their own allies are attacking them, their response will be predictably chaotic. The Admiral's expression hardened as he made his decision. Captain Stone, you'll have your 12 ships and full authorization to use any tactics you deem necessary. Dr. Forster, I want every technological advantage we can develop deployed with that fleet. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when they mistake humanity's restraint for weakness. Stone straightened to attention, but his eyes held the gleam of a hunter who had just been released to pursue his prey. When do we launch? 72 hours, Hayes replied. That should give us time to complete final preparations and position our forces for maximum impact. The Council thinks they've solved their human problem through exile and intimidation. They're about to discover that they've actually created something far worse than anything they could have imagined. As the command staff dispersed to begin preparations for humanity's first strike against the Galactic Order, Hayes remained at the central display, studying the positions of enemy fleets and trying to calculate the cost of the war he was about to unleash. The numbers were sobering, but the alternative was the slow extinction of human civilization under the watchful eyes of Species 2. Afraid of change to allow it, humanity had tried diplomacy and been rejected. They had offered cooperation and been spurned. Now they would offer something the galaxy had not seen in 10,000 years. Evolution through conquest, progress through victory, and dominance through the simple recognition that in a universe full of ancient civilizations, sometimes the youngest predator was also the most dangerous. The space around Rigel Nexus had remained peaceful for over 3 centuries, its trade routes protected by the comfortable assumption that no species would dare challenge the Galactic Council's authority in such a strategically vital location. The 60 Vorthok vessels that patrolled the system moved in ancient formations, their crystalline hulls glinting in the light of the massive blue star that gave the system its name. None of them detected the 12 human ships that had spent the last 18 hours using quantum stealth technology to position themselves for an attack that would change galactic warfare forever. Captain Rex Stone studied the tactical display aboard his flagship, the Retribution, with the cold calculation of a chess master preparing to sacrifice pawns for victory. His officers moved quietly around the bridge, each one knowing that the next few hours would either establish humanity as a galactic power or see them all vaporized by weapons that had maintained galactic peace for millennia. Enemy formations are exactly as predicted, reported Lieutenant Kim Park, the ship's tactical officer. They're maintaining standard patrol patterns with their heavy cruisers positioned to protect the main shipping lanes. No indication they're aware of our presence. Stone nodded. His attention focused on the 3 massive Vorthok heavy cruisers that formed the backbone of the system's defenses. Each ship was over 2 kilometers long and armed with planet-cracking weapons that could reduce a moon to asteroid debris. In conventional warfare, a single heavy cruiser could easily destroy Stone's entire fleet. But conventional warfare was about to become as obsolete as wooden sailing ships. Dr. Martinez, status on the information warfare package, Stone requested, turning to the small woman who represented humanity's newest and perhaps most devastating weapon. Dr. Alina Martinez looked up from her console, her fingers still dancing across controls that would have been incomprehensible to Council species. The neural intrusion protocols are ready, Captain. We've identified the primary communication frequencies the Vorthok use for fleet coordination. Once we begin transmission, their collective consciousness should experience what humans would call severe paranoia and confusion. Stone's smile was not pleasant. The Psychological Warfare Division had spent months studying captured Council technology and intercepted communications, learning how to turn each species' greatest strengths into crippling weaknesses. The Vorthok collective consciousness that made them nearly impossible to surprise in normal circumstances would become a liability when flooded with contradictory information and false threat assessments. All ships report ready for combat, announced Commander Wright from the communications station. Weapons systems are fully charged and adaptive armor is online. The fleet is awaiting your orders, sir. Stone took one final look at the peaceful scene displayed on his view screen, knowing that in a few minutes this system would become the site of the first human victory against the Galactic Order. Begin information warfare protocols. Launch the neural intrusion package. The invisible attack began immediately, quantum encrypted signals flooding Vorthok communication networks with carefully crafted misinformation. Within seconds, the crystalline beings began receiving reports that Borgathy ships were moving to attack positions, that Alteron energy beings were preparing to drain their power cores, and that human raiders had somehow infiltrated their most secure facilities. The effect was immediate and devastating. The orderly patrol formations began to break apart as Vorthok ships moved to respond to threats that existed only in their collective imagination. The three heavy cruisers turned their weapons on each other, each group convinced that their allies had been compromised by enemy infiltration. Now, Stone ordered quietly, 12 human ships dropped their stealth fields simultaneously and opened fire with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Quantum torpedoes phased through Vorthok's shields like they were made of paper, while adaptive armor began analyzing and countering the aliens. Return fire before the energy bolts had finished crossing the void between ships. The first vessel to die was a patrol frigate that had the misfortune to be closest to the Retribution when the battle began. Stone's ship hit it with 3 quantum torpedoes in rapid succession, each weapon learning from the previous impact and adjusting its approach accordingly. The crystalline hull that had been designed to resist energy weapons for centuries shattered like glass under the assault of technology that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Target the communications arrays, Stone commanded as his fleet spread out in a formation that seemed chaotic to observers but was actually a carefully planned dance of destruction. Cut their ability to coordinate with each other or call for reinforcements. Human ships moved through space with an efficiency that bordered on artistic, their AI systems analyzing enemy movements and adjusting tactics faster than biological minds could follow. When the Vorthok deployed their traditional energy shields, the human weapons switched to kinetic projectiles. When the aliens attempted to ram human vessels in desperation, the adaptive armor reconfigured itself to deflect the impact, while simultaneously launching boarding pods. The 3 heavy cruisers that had seemed so invincible minutes earlier found themselves fighting shadows. Human ships would appear just long enough to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing back into stealth, only to reappear somewhere completely unexpected. The Vorthok weapons that could crack planets proved useless against enemies that refused to remain in one place long enough to be targeted. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead heavy cruiser," reported Commander Wright. "They're requesting terms for surrender." Stone's expression remained implacable. "Tell them there are no terms. They wanted humanity exiled from the galaxy. Now they can experience exile from existence." The battle continued for another 40 minutes, but the outcome had been decided in the first 5. Human technology proved superior to Council defenses in every meaningful category, while human tactics demonstrated a flexibility that the ancient civilizations had forgotten was possible. When the last Vorthok ship finally went silent, drifting dead in space with its crystalline hull, cracked and bleeding atmosphere, Stone allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "Casualties?" he inquired, though he already knew the answer from monitoring his fleet's status. "None, sir," Lieutenant Park reported, with barely concealed amazement. "Minor damage to 3 ships, but the adaptive armor has already completed repairs. We're at 100% combat effectiveness." Stone nodded, then moved to the communications station. "Open a channel to the entire galaxy. It's time to announce humanity's return to galactic affairs." The transmission that followed would be remembered for centuries as the moment when the old galactic order died and something far more dangerous took its place. Stone's image appeared on screens throughout Council space, his uniform bearing no insignia of rank that alien species would recognize, his expression carrying the quiet confidence of absolute victory. "This is Captain Stone of the Human Defense Force," he began, his words being translated into hundreds of languages by communication networks that the Council had built to maintain their authority. "The Rigel Nexus is now under human control. All Council species are hereby ordered to withdraw from this system within 24 hours. The captain paused, allowing his words to sink in before delivering the message that would change everything. "The Galactic Council believed they could exile humanity and force us to accept their judgment. They were wrong. We tried diplomacy and were rejected. We offered cooperation and were spurned. Now we offer you a simple choice: submit to human authority or share the fate of the Vorthok fleet that once defended this system." Stone gestured to the debris field that had once been 60 warships, his meaning unmistakable. "Any Council vessel approaching human territory will be destroyed without warning. Any species that continues to support the Council's authority will be considered an enemy of humanity. The age of galactic peace maintained through fear and stagnation is over. The age of human dominance has begun." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence as species that had ruled for millennia tried to comprehend what they had just witnessed. In a single engagement, humanity had not only defeated a superior force, but had done so with such overwhelming technological and tactical superiority that the very foundations of galactic power had shifted. 3 more systems fell to human forces within the week, each victory more decisive than the last, as humanity's adaptive technology improved and their understanding of Council weaknesses deepened. The exile that was supposed to contain humanity had instead unleashed them upon a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to face a truly dangerous enemy. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the deepest vaults of the Alteron homeworld, far beneath the crystalline spires that had once symbolized their eternal dominance over galactic affairs. The chamber chosen for this gathering was deliberately primitive, its walls made of simple stone rather than the energy constructs that defined Alteron architecture. Fear had driven the galaxy's oldest civilization to hide in caves like their distant ancestors. And they were not alone in their terror. Chancellor Saren flickered with barely controlled panic as reports continued to stream in from across the galaxy. What had begun as a simple punishment for human arrogance had transformed into an existential crisis that threatened every established power in known space. 15 systems now flew human flags, and worse. They were systems that controlled critical trade routes and resource nodes that the Council had taken for granted for millennia. The slug-like Borgathi, War Speaker Gorks, slithered into the chamber, his massive form scarred from a recent encounter with human forces. 3 of his eyes had been replaced with crude mechanical substitutes, and his voice carried a tremor that spoke of trauma beyond physical injury. "The fortress world of Terminus Gate has fallen," he announced, his words causing several council members to manifest their species equivalent of despair. "Impossible. whispered the Vorthok, collective representative. Its crystalline form, dim with shock. Terminus Gate was impregnable. Our greatest military architects spent centuries designing its defenses. The energy barriers alone should have stopped any fleet. Gorks's remaining natural eyes focused on the crystal being with something approaching hatred. The humans did not attack the barriers, he explained, his voice hollow. They landed ground forces directly on the planet's surface using some form of dimensional technology we do not understand. By the time our orbital defenses realized what was happening, enemy soldiers were already inside our most secure installations. The war speaker activated a holographic display that showed the final moments of the battle for Terminus Gate. Council representatives watched in horrified fascination as human soldiers moved through Borgathy corridors with terrifying efficiency, their armor adapting to each new threat they encountered, their weapons switching configurations based on the specific vulnerabilities of each enemy they faced. They knew exactly where to strike, Gorks continued, his massive form trembling with remembered fear. Every weakness in our defenses, every blind spot in our surveillance network, every psychological pressure point that would break our warriors' morale. It was as if they had been studying us for years, learning everything about how we fight, how we think, how we can be defeated. Chancellor CERN's energy form brightened with desperate hope. Perhaps we underestimated their initial intelligence-gathering capabilities, but surely they cannot have studied every species. The diversity of Council military doctrine should provide some protection against their adaptive strategies. The response came from an unexpected source as the ghostly figure of a Zephyrian scout materialized at the chamber's center. The ethereal being rarely spoke in council sessions, preferring to observe and report rather than participate in debates. But the information it carried was too important for diplomatic protocols. The humans have developed quantum consciousness transfer technology, the scout reported, its voice like whispered wind through dead leaves. Every engagement, every battle, every tactical lesson learned by one human commander is instantly shared with every other human military officer in their fleet. They do not study us for years, they study us for minutes during active combat and then apply that knowledge across their entire military force simultaneously. The implications hit the assembled representatives like a physical blow. Traditional military doctrine assumed that lessons learned in battle would take weeks or months to propagate through enemy command structures. Human forces were learning and adapting in real time, creating a feedback loop of tactical improvement that grew exponentially with each engagement. Dr. Amy Foster's breakthrough had evolved far beyond her original design, becoming something that transformed human military capability from merely superior to genuinely terrifying. Each battle taught every human captain, each victory improved every human ship, and each defeated council vessel provided new data that would be used to defeat the next council fleet more efficiently. Admiral Stone's forces have been promoted to full fleet status, reported the Krell intelligence coordinator, its insectoid mandibles clicking with nervous energy. Human industrial capacity has exceeded all our projections. They are producing new warships at a rate that suggests their entire civilization has been converted to military production. Chancellor CERN's form dimmed as the true scope of their situation became clear. How many ships do they have now? Conservative estimates suggest over 300 vessels of their new Prometheus class, the Krell replied. But these numbers may be deliberately misleading. Human information warfare has proven so effective that we cannot trust any intelligence gathered through conventional means. The chamber fell silent as each representative contemplated the mathematical reality of their situation. The human fleet was not only growing rapidly, but was improving with each engagement while council forces continued to rely on tactics and technologies that had proven inadequate against humanity's adaptive warfare doctrine. Gorks's scarred form straightened with what might have been resolve or desperation. "There's one option we have not considered," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of a decision that would haunt him forever. Total mobilization. Every council species commits their entire military force to a coordinated strike against the human home system. End this threat before it grows beyond our ability to contain it. The suggestion sent ripples of shock through the assembled aliens. Total mobilization had not been contemplated since the Great Plague Wars that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization 8,000 years earlier. The economic and social disruption would be catastrophic, but the alternative appeared to be the complete overthrow of the galactic order they had spent millennia building. The humans will expect such an attack, warned the Vorthok Collective. Their defensive preparations around Earth must be extensive by now. We would be attacking them where they are strongest, while leaving our own territories vulnerable to their raiding forces. Chancellor Seren flickered between different energy states as it processed the tactical implications. Perhaps that is precisely why we must act quickly. Every day we delay allows them to grow stronger, while we grow relatively weaker. The question is not whether we can defeat them now, but whether we will have any chance at all if we wait longer. The debate that followed would have seemed impossible just months earlier. As species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia argued about how to destroy a civilization they had dismissed as primitive just a year before. The humans had not merely defeated their enemies, they had forced their enemies to become something they had never been. Desperate, as the council representatives continued their increasingly frantic deliberations, human forces were already moving toward their next target. Admiral Stone's fleet had grown to include some of humanity's most experienced commanders, each one eager to test their improved ships and tactics against enemies who still believed that ancient wisdom could overcome youthful innovation. The Borgathy fortress world of Terminus Gate had fallen not through overwhelming force, but through precise application of human advantages, superior technology, adaptive tactics, and most importantly, the kind of strategic thinking that comes from a species that had earned its place at the top of the food chain through intelligence rather than inherited power. The battle for Terminus Gate lasted less than 6 hours from first landing to final surrender, but its impact on galactic affairs would endure for generations. The fortress that had never fallen to any enemy had been reduced to rubble by forces that learned and adapted faster than its defenders could respond. When Admiral Stone broadcast his victory message to the galaxy, his words carried a confidence that chilled every species that heard them. The Council believes their numbers give them strength, he announced from the ruins of what had once been the most fortified position in Borgathy space. They are wrong. Their numbers only provide us with more targets to practice on, more technology to study, and more proof that the age of human dominance is not coming, it is already here. The same crystalline chamber that had witnessed humanity's exile now hosted a very different gathering. Though the irony was lost on none of the participants, where once the Galactic Council had sat in judgment upon Ambassador David Grant, now the former council members occupied simple chairs, arranged in a semicircle before the throne that had belonged to the Alteron Chancellor. The being of pure energy that had condemned humanity to isolation now flickered weakly in a containment field, its power diminished and its authority stripped away by forces it had never imagined possible. Fleet Admiral Tom Hayes occupied the Chancellor's position with the quiet confidence of absolute victory, his simple human form somehow more imposing than the exotic aliens who had once ruled the galaxy. Around him, holographic displays showed the current state of galactic civilization under human administration, and the transformation was as complete as it was irreversible. Trade flowed more efficiently than it had in centuries. Scientific advancement had accelerated beyond previous comprehension, and for the first time in millennia, the galaxy was truly united under a single authority. The former Borgathy war speaker, Gorks, shifted uncomfortably in his restraints, his massive slug-like form bearing the scars of humanity's final offensive against his homeworld. "What do you want from us?" he asked, his voice carrying none of the arrogance that had once defined council interactions with younger species. Hayes smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. Everything, he replied simply. Your worlds, your resources, your technology, your complete and unconditional surrender to human authority. The difference between us and you is that we will make the galaxy better while we take control of it. Ambassador Grant stepped forward from his position beside the throne. Now bearing the title of Supreme Coordinator for Galactic Affairs, his diplomatic robes had been replaced by a simple but elegant uniform that marked him as one of humanity's highest-ranking civilian administrators. You hoarded knowledge while species stagnated, he explained, his voice carrying the patience of someone explaining basic concepts to children. We share information freely and encourage innovation. You limited population growth and expansion to maintain artificial scarcity. We promote growth and development because abundance benefits everyone. The former chancellor's energy form flickered, with what might have been confusion or despair. Your species was too aggressive, too reckless. We sought to preserve the stability that has maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years. Your definition of peace was stagnation, Hayes replied coldly. Your idea of stability was the suppression of any species that might challenge your authority. You created a galaxy where advancement was discouraged, where exploration was forbidden, and where entire civilizations were forced to accept permanent inferiority to maintain your vision of order. Grant activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the 15 core systems under direct human control. The transformation was remarkable. Worlds that had been strip-mined and abandoned under Council administration now flourished with new colonies and industrial centers. Trade routes that had been artificially constrained to benefit Council species now operated at maximum efficiency to serve all galactic citizens. Look at what we have accomplished in just 1 year, Grant continued, gesturing to the display. Agricultural output has increased by 40% through the application of human farming techniques. Industrial production has doubled by eliminating the artificial restrictions you placed on technological development. Scientific advancement has accelerated exponentially because we encourage collaboration rather than competition. The Vorthok collective representative, its crystalline form dim with defeat, managed to speak despite its obviously broken condition. You destroyed our fleets, conquered our worlds, and forced our surrender. How is this different from any other conquest in galactic history? Hayes leaned forward in his throne, his expression becoming genuinely serious for the first time since the session began. Because we do not rule through fear alone, he explained. Every world under human administration has seen improvements in quality of life, advances in technology, and increases in personal freedom. We govern through competence, not through the threat of violence. As if summoned by his words, the chamber's doors opened to admit a group of beings that would have been impossible under the old galactic order. Krell scientists worked alongside human researchers, their insectoid forms animated with excitement as they discussed breakthrough discoveries in quantum mechanics. Young Borgathy engineers collaborated with human technicians on projects that would have been forbidden under Council regulations. Most remarkably, Alteron energy beings flickered in harmony with human consciousness researchers, exploring new frontiers of existence that neither species could have achieved alone. This is what your fear prevented, Grant said, gesturing to the integrated research teams. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not domination, but partnership. Not the suppression of potential, but its complete realization. The former war speaker Gorks watched the mixed groups with something approaching wonder. Our children work with humans now, he admitted reluctantly. They come home speaking of discoveries we never imagined possible, of futures we never dared to dream. But you still rule us through superior force. Initially, yes, Hayes acknowledged without shame. You gave us no choice when you attempted to exile us from the galaxy. But force was only the tool we used to break your on galactic development. What we offer now is something far more valuable than mere dominance. Dr. Amy Foster entered the chamber, carrying a datapad that glowed with the soft blue light of quantum processing systems. Her appearance had changed little since the war began, but her eyes now held the confidence of someone who had helped reshape the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. "The latest integration reports," she announced, handing the device to Grant. Grant studied the information with growing satisfaction before sharing it with the assembled former council members. 300 million beings from council species have requested transfer to human-administered worlds in the past month alone, he reported. They are not fleeing in fear, they are seeking opportunity. The holographic display shifted to show testimonials from aliens who had experienced life under human administration. A Zephyrian spoke of research opportunities that had been denied for centuries under council regulations. A young Vorthok crystal singer described artistic expressions that had been impossible when creativity was discouraged in favor of conformity. Most powerful of all, a Borgathy parent explained how their offspring would have opportunities for advancement that the council system had reserved only for established families. "You offer them material improvements," the former chancellor said, its energy form stabilizing slightly. "But what of spiritual fulfillment, of connection to the ancient wisdom that has guided our species for millennia?" Hayes stood from the throne and walked to the great viewport that dominated one wall of the chamber. Beyond the crystalline walls, space traffic moved in patterns that would have been impossible under the old system. Human ships worked alongside alien vessels in construction projects that spanned entire star systems, building infrastructure that would benefit all species rather than serving the narrow interests of a ruling elite. "Your ancient wisdom taught you to fear change, to suppress growth, and to maintain power through the artificial limitation of opportunity," Hayes replied, without turning from the viewport. "Our young wisdom teaches us that the universe is vast, enough for everyone to prosper, complex enough to reward innovation, and dynamic enough to punish stagnation." The Admiral turned back to face the defeated council members, his expression reflecting the certainty of absolute victory. "You asked what we want from you. The answer is simple. We want you to accept that the age of artificial scarcity and enforced limitations is over. We want you to embrace the reality that humanity will lead the galaxy toward a future you never had the courage to imagine." Grant stepped forward to deliver the final terms of surrender that would formalize the new galactic order. "Your species will retain autonomy over your internal affairs, but all external policy will be coordinated through human administration. Your military forces will be integrated into the human defense force under our command structure. Your scientific and technological development will proceed according to human priorities and standards." The former council members exchanged glances that carried the weight of their complete defeat. They had entered this war believing they were containing a dangerous upstart species, only to discover that they had unleashed the galaxy's new dominant civilization. "And if we refuse?" asked the Krell representative, though its tone suggested the question was merely academic. Hayes returned to his throne, settling into the seat of galactic power with the casual authority of someone who had earned his position through superior capability. "Then you will discover what extinction looks like," he said simply. "But I do not believe you will refuse. Your species may be proud, but they are not stupid. You can see the benefits of human administration as clearly as anyone else." The session concluded with the formal signing of surrender, documents that would be remembered as the foundation of humanity's galactic empire. But as the former council members were escorted from the chamber, they could not help but notice that their guards were mixed teams of humans and aliens working together, with an efficiency that the old system had never achieved. Grant remained behind as the chamber emptied, studying reports from across human space that painted a picture of unprecedented prosperity and growth. "Do you think they will accept their new position?" he asked Hayes. The Admiral smiled, but this time the expression carried genuine warmth rather than cold triumph. "They already have. Their children are learning in our schools, their scientists are working in our laboratories, and their leaders are beginning to understand that we offer them something they never had under the council system: hope for a better future. Outside the chamber's viewport, the lights of a dozen species ships moved in perfect coordination, building stations and colonies that would serve as stepping stones to galaxies beyond. Humanity had not simply conquered the galaxy they had transformed it into something worthy of their dreams and ambitions. The exile that was meant to contain them had instead unleashed them upon a universe that would never be the same.